Hi, Sterling. Nice to see you via internet, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks for having me.
I have just said in Polish that I was looking forward to your speech because the idea of saying anything is possible is very close to my heart. Have you heard about the Ironman competition, sport competition?
Of course, I know it well.
So you probably know the distances during the competition. So 4 km swimming, 180 cycling, and 42 running, the whole marathon, yeah?
Right, it's serious.
Yeah, so I would like to tell you that I wrote a book about my friend who, at the beginning of early 90s, he was a drug addict, smoker, alcoholic, and he gave up all the addiction and became world championship in double Ironman. So not in Ironman, in double Ironman. So anything is possible, I believe.
It really is. That's incredible.
Yeah. So tell us how our limitations can, become our strength.
Yeah. Well, that's really what today's presentation is about. So should I dive in here, or do you want to talk for a little bit about it first? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I hear you, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's looking for how you can flip it. And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today, is how can you take the problems, the limits, the obstacles, whatever they might be, and actually use them for our advantage. It's the old Stoic saying, the way out is through.
Tak,
You guys can still hear me,
chyba
yes?
mamy jakiś problem
Dive into the
techniczny.
presentation?
Can you hear me, Sterling? Yeah. I can hear you
I can hear
perfectly.
you. You can hear me?
So we can go through the presentation.
Great, fantastic. Well, once again, I appreciate being here. And, the world looks a little different today, doesn't it? It can't just be me. This conference being semi-virtual is, well, it's different. Just about every conference being at least virtual in some component is different. I mean, being online for most everything is different, right? Now, it's roughly 6 a.m. here. I'm in the US, so I might be off in my assessment. But from what I understand, the pandemic's gone a little differently here in the States than it has in Poland and through most of Europe. But what I know to be true is that businesses are struggling. People are struggling to find jobs and take care of their families. Well, and socially conscious companies are struggling to keep their vision alive. And now my clicker's working. So I love the theme of the conference, driving change, right? Because, well, it's what's needed today more than ever. And what we're going to do here is take that up a level and not just talk about driving linear incremental change, but how do we drive transformational change in a socially conscious company, even during this unique time in history? Because who would have thought we'd be here in 2020? I don't know how it was for you, but for me, that change, that difference that we all are living in now, well, it happened quick. It was March 11th. I'm just home from giving a keynote in Orlando, Florida. Put my bags upstairs like I usually do. Come down, sit on the couch to check emails, and of course, I'm distracted by Facebook. You've all been there, right? First thing that comes up is the NBA, the Basketball Association here in the US, is canceling their season. A multi-billion-dollar organization is suspending their business. Now, we love our basketball here in the States, just like you love your football, right? So maybe it wasn't the NBA for you. Maybe it was football canceling. I think it was on March 13th in Poland. Or maybe it's something else entirely. But we all had that moment, that realization that what was happening was unprecedented in our lifetimes. Do you remember where you were, how you felt, what fears you had? I think the whole world was fearful. I know I was. And it became really clear to me, really fast, that, well, my business would never be the same. And sure enough, wouldn't you know it, just like the NBA was canceled, my business started getting canceled. It was a little while after I saw the news on the NBA, the first call comes in, and it's the keynote I have the following week. Canceled. A little while later, another phone call comes in, and another, and another, and another. And, there was this rush to cancel flights and review cancellation policies and, make sure cash flow was okay. And in a span of 3 days, my entire business went from this record year to zero. Season canceled. Now, some of you can say that your season was canceled as well, can't you? At the very least, your season isn't going how you thought it would go. But I remember it was late one Saturday night after the dust settled and the damage control was over. I'm sitting in my brand new home office, and I think to myself, I can't believe this happened to me again. You see, it's not the first time I've had my season totally canceled. In fact, my career, my life has been about coming back from the brink. To sell the company, to restart the company, to finish the ultra marathon, sometimes totally failing, but learning what it takes to come back, what it takes to break through. It happened to me in 2007 when the group I sold my first company to raised $550 million before going bankrupt. Canceled. 2012, a family business splintered into nothing. Canceled. 2016, I had some investors pull out, left me with nothing. Canceled. And here I was in 2020, canceled again. Now, we all have good seasons and bad seasons. Even the Polish national team, I know, I looked it up. But when you're having a bad season, you can't help but think, man, this isn't fair. Hopefully you'll know this reference, but I was about ready to take Chris Farley's advice from Saturday Night Live and go live in a van down by the river. I'm typically a pretty outgoing guy. I love being with people. I love talking with people. It's my whole profession. But back in March and April, I was surviving on a diet of pizza and solitude. And it's a problem when your favorite pizza place calls you to see if you're okay. So as you can imagine, I've been in a world of discomfort since March 11th. The world has been in discomfort. You've maybe been in discomfort. Maybe you still are. But discomfort is necessary for a breakthrough. Now, maybe you guessed some things have changed for me. We did more business last month than January and February combined. And I'm not telling you that as like a pat on the back or bragging or anything else. I'm telling you because we've been knocked down enough times to figure out a reliable system to come back better, faster, and stronger than ever before. Now I get to share that stuff with you. Don't worry, I still love pizza. So if you have recommendations in Poland, I will get there one of these days, I promise. And naturally, if you're ever in the US, let me know where you are and I'll send you the greatest pizza spot there. But things have changed for all of us. I want to appreciate you guys being here, taking the time for this with everything happening in the world, your business, and I'm sure even your lives. And thank you to Sektor 3.0 for hosting us all. And the Herculean effort that it's to put these things online. Really appreciate them for that and for moving forward. I'm especially happy to be here because, well, that's what I'm about, moving forward regardless of the circumstances. Or said another way, how to get results no matter what. These days, it's harder than ever. What's true about nonprofits here in the States is the same there in most places around the world. There's limited cash, not enough access to technology because of cash, because of the resources we have. trouble accessing the right talent, at least for the budgets that we have, legal regulation on top of bureaucracy, and we're not even quite sure these days how and when and where we can get together. If that weren't enough, we've got a pandemic, tech disruption, civil unrest, not able to know what news to trust. And through all of that, there's still brutal competition and more customer demands than ever. So how do we take all of that and turn it into results no matter what? Well, most people and companies think that, well, if we only had this technology or if we only had this amount of money, well, then we could be successful. Or we preoccupy ourselves with this key metric and this goal as our sole objective. The truth is, that approach is exactly backwards. Now, I study innovation and breakthrough growth. And in the innovation world, there's this car analogy. They say, don't look in the rearview mirror, look out the front window, look at where you're going. It means don't just look into the past, look into the future. I think that's right, but it leaves us really only focusing on a destination and the path that we're going to take to get there. So for example, let's take a socially conscious company, maybe a nonprofit. They want to raise 5% more funds next year. Well, that's the goal, the destination. And to do that, well, maybe we'll host a virtual event or we'll call donors or do some advertising, right? That's how we're going to arrive there. But what it misses is something that's fundamentally critical and so blatantly obvious, well, we simply overlook it. The vehicle. It's the vehicle that represents your culture that's going to get you to any of these destinations to begin with. Your culture is the set of collective beliefs, values, ethics that any group of people hold. Now, some of those things are conscious, but many of them are unconscious. It's the unwritten rules that make it okay to say one thing and not okay to say something else. Okay to sanction this project, but well, maybe not that one. It's what gives you this idea, and this is the scary part. This idea never even crosses your mind. It's the context that we're operating in. Now, every vertical is going through transformation these days. You know, we've got education with distance learning. We've got automotive is being disrupted by autonomous vehicles. Social good organizations are dealing with everything becoming virtual, and artificial intelligence is impacting everything. All those things are important, but they are secondary to the systems and practices within our culture that's going to get us anywhere. Now, I believe so much in culture and what we're doing here because, well, I've experienced the pain of not being ready for change. I've also seen it countless times, and well, you already know that change is inevitable. But those same tools, those same skill sets that prepare us for change also give us breakthrough results. Now, I grew up a fifth-generation retailer, and in retail, we knew that, well, if Walmart's coming in town, business is going to be rough. And just when we figure out Walmart, here comes Amazon. And even Walmart's having problems with them. But that's really when you need this no matter what approach, when you're in difficult circumstances. I learned more about difficult circumstances with the tech startup world. You know, the first company I founded was a personalized marketing group. It was one of the first companies to start sending personalized messages to your email box. I wasn't well liked by the inbox zero world, but I really learned about what it takes to create and disrupt new industries. Now, I've gone on to do all sorts of things. I've been involved in the launch, growth, or investment of over 50 companies. I've become obsessed with pushing my own comfort zone with skydiving, shark diving, and trekking the Sahara. I'm certainly not the smartest person in the world. I'm not the most successful. I'm not the fittest. So every step of the way, well, I'd be looking to learn from those that have done much better than I. I was talking to billionaire founders, Olympic gold medalists, Top Gun pilots, and, well, famous entrepreneurs. And I only tell you all of that because my career's given me a front row seat to say, well, how effective culture can give you outsized results no matter the circumstances. All of that has come together in what I call a no matter what system. A system to achieve results regardless of the circumstances. Now, this approach is designed around 5 components for individuals or companies to achieve transformational growth. And it turns out that whether you're trying to climb Mount Vrisi or Mount Everest, pivot a massive public company, grow your social good organization, or just get your startup off the ground, these same 5 practices are identical to do it. Today is about 1. It's an approach called flip it. It's how to turn limits, breakdowns, into breakthroughs so you never have to say impossible again. Now, over the next couple of minutes, look for how you can grab onto this approach and insert it directly into your business. We need these breakthroughs more than ever because just growing a little bit or trying to survive, well, it leaves us open to the next innovation, the next startup, God forbid, the next pandemic being the end of our company or career. So let's really grab onto this no matter what approach to win. Let me ask you, what industry was hardest hit by the pandemic? Just think for a moment. Well, airlines, hotels, of course. Number 1, at least according to Forbes, restaurants. If you were a restaurant in early 2020, well, you were in a rough spot, weren't you? Maybe not. And thinking that way is a trap because those of us that fail to adapt will ultimately fail. Let me introduce you to Eric Rivera. Now, Eric's the owner of Addo, a restaurant in Seattle, Washington, here in the US, one of the hardest hit places by the pandemic early on. Instead of rolling over and waiting until things got back to normal, Eric got to work. He said, how can I flip it? How can I take those problems and make them work to my advantage? Well, the first thing was all of his employees, all of his servers, well, they could no longer serve tables. But what they could do is deliver food to people's homes. And they created their very own custom and very special delivery service. He was also having issues with accessing products because of the supply chain kind of seen early on. So he said, well, let me flip that too. We're going to offer limited time offers, limited products, limited tasting menus. And sure enough, once customers got over that kind of initial shock that we all went through, they started to order and tell their friends, and he kept going. He started shipping meat, seafood, and pantry items across the US. And during one of the toughest times in history for a restaurant, Eric was doing more business than ever. Now, the thing with these breakout results is they're not obvious, right? If they were, you'd be doing it already. There's a specific approach, a methodology that I'm going to tell you here very briefly. And if you've got a smartphone, just capture this QR code. It's going to be on the next couple of pages, so if you don't grab it here, no problem, but you can actually download this worksheet exactly how it's going to be. There's 4 steps to this. Understanding the problem, looking at why it's a problem, consider what your vision is, and then speculate on what else is possible, how to fulfill on that mission, just in a different way. For Eric, most of what he was dealing with was COVID-19 breakdowns, but what he realized is that his vision, what he ultimately wanted to achieve, is to serve customers with experience and do it without letting any of his people go. And he did it to tremendous success. It doesn't just work for restaurants. I know you're surprised to hear that. It works for any kind of business. So let's take a social good organization. This one's not far from you over there in Poland. These guys, it's called GIZ in Germany. And they have a mission in Africa to protect the biodiversity there and support the local economies. It's important because not only do we need to take care of the people there, but if some of these plants and animals are lost, well, they're lost forever. So it's definitely something that requires a no matter what approach. Prior to the pandemic, they were hosting safaris. And of course, like many of us, their entire business was, well, almost reduced to zero because of the pandemic. So they had to take that and flip it. Here's that same approach. You kind of look through, well, their problem was, well, no tourists, lack of funds, breakdown in local economies. But what they ultimately wanted to achieve is to connect people with the biodiversity by supporting the local community. And what they did, I absolutely love, partially because I love technology. You can ask Apple how much money I spend there. But they created a digital platform where you can imagine logging in by subscription, connected to these camera traps and eventually drones, where you can get a mobile notification when your favorite animal is coming by. Not only does it fulfill on their mission, but they do it much more scalably than would otherwise be possible. They flipped the problem and made it work to their advantage. So there's countless examples of that flip it approach working, not to mention the other 4 no matter what practices I'll have to tell you about another time. But it's not easy. It takes work. It takes really embracing the unknown. There's no way to keep doing what we're doing as socially conscious companies or any companies and expect to have a breakthrough result. It just doesn't happen. Yeah, of course there's companies to manage. Of course there's a pandemic to deal with, operations to scale, finances to manage, right? But all of that is secondary to these practices. The answers are not out there. The future's not even out there. I mean, think about it. Your future can't happen without you. And your results are driven by the systems and practices within your culture, not the other way around. So it's that position, that perspective that's going to win the day. I'm delivering this from about 5,300 miles away, something like that. I've spent time in Europe. I lived in Madrid. I've flown through Poland. But these days, we're all dealing with similar challenges. And to get through those things, we need a no matter what approach. So no matter what title you have, what position you hold, what legacy you're trying to achieve, the world today is calling for you to be something more. Becoming the kind of person, the kind of organization that looks at the status quo newly, that doesn't accept good enough as a direction and does something about it. There are 3 things I'm going to leave you with to kind of set you up to drive change and frame our conversation today. The first is, whenever you run into discomfort, difficulty, search for those breakthrough results no matter what. When you run into problems, limits, roadblocks, obstructions of any kind, use them to your advantage no matter what. And when things are uncertain, push through to realize that vision that the world needs today more than ever, no matter what. Thank you, guys. It's been great being with you.